It's a calm morning in the South China Sea when suddenly advanced radar systems detect something that would transform a routine patrol into one of the most intense naval standoffs in recent history. What happened next would showcase exactly why maritime dominance remains such a crucial element of modern geopolitics, and why certain navies have maintained their supremacy for decades. The story begins during the early morning hours of June 14th, 2025, as the USS Princeton conducted what naval forces call a freedom of navigation operation. These routine patrols serve a vital purpose in maintaining open sea lanes that facilitate global commerce worth trillions of dollars annually. The Princeton, a sophisticated guided missile cruiser, was operating in international waters when her advanced radar systems painted a contact that would escalate tensions dramatically. The contact was a Chinese Type 052D destroyer, a formidable warship that had been maintaining position at approximately 200 kilometers distance. Naval intelligence quickly identified the vessel as the Jun Shan, and what happened next would test the professionalism and restraint of both crews. The Chinese destroyer suddenly accelerated from 18 knots to 30 knots in under 90 seconds, a clear indication of aggressive intent that sent ripples through the American ship's Combat Information Center. Unknown to the American crew at that moment, the Jun Shan's captain had just received direct orders from Beijing to intercept the American formation and, in military parlance, make them blink first. This type of maritime intimidation represents a classic example of gunboat diplomacy, where nations use naval power to project political influence without necessarily resorting to actual combat. However, Beijing was about to discover why challenging the United States Navy in open ocean remains a strategically questionable decision. The broader context of this encounter involves the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, a floating symbol of American naval power that had been conducting operations designed to keep the world's most critical shipping lanes secure and accessible. These sea routes carry an astounding $3.4 trillion in annual trade, making their protection essential to global economic stability. The strike group was positioned 180 nautical miles from the nearest Chinese territory, well within international waters, where freedom of navigation is guaranteed under international maritime law. The Nimitz herself represents over 100,000 tons of sophisticated naval engineering, carrying 90 of the world's most advanced military aircraft. Her mission was textbook maritime operations, maintain predictable courses, demonstrate transparent intentions, and exhibit the kind of professional naval conduct that distinguishes legitimate navies from irregular maritime forces. This professionalism would become crucial as tensions continued to escalate throughout the encounter. As the tactical situation developed, the Princeton's radar operators completed their threat assessment, confirming the Chinese destroyer as a Type 052D with a moderate to high threat classification. Inside the Princeton's Combat Information Center, the tactical action officer observed the Chinese vessel's approach vector with the calm confidence that comes from commanding one of the world's most advanced warships. The Princeton's 122 vertical launch cells contained enough firepower to neutralize any surface threat, while her advanced sensor systems provided unparalleled situational awareness. The technological advantage became immediately apparent as the Princeton's SPY radar, arguably the world's most sophisticated naval sensor system, painted a crystal-clear tactical picture of the approaching threat. This radar system can track objects with such precision that every detail of an enemy vessel becomes visible to operators, providing crucial intelligence for defensive planning. Meanwhile, the Chinese destroyer would reach weapons engagement range in approximately 17 minutes at her current speed and heading. The mathematics of naval warfare tell a compelling story about technological superiority. While the Chinese destroyer's YJ-18 anti-ship missiles could cover the remaining distance in under 4 minutes once launched. The Princeton's SM-6 missiles in surface attack mode possessed a range of approximately 240 nautical miles, giving American forces a decisive engagement envelope advantage. This range differential represents years of investment in advanced missile technology and sophisticated fire control systems. When the Princeton's captain was briefed on the probable intent of the approaching Chinese vessel, his response embodied the confidence that comes from commanding superior technology and highly trained personnel. Rather than immediately escalating to general quarters, he chose to observe how far the Chinese were willing to push their aggressive posture, knowing that American forces held every tactical advantage in this encounter. The South China Sea's importance cannot be overstated when considering global maritime security. At the time of this incident, 46 commercial vessels operated within 50 miles of the encounter, all depending on American naval presence to guarantee safe passage through these contested waters. Among these vessels were a Singapore-flagged container ship loaded with critical semiconductors and a South Korean LNG tanker worth $200 million, representing the kind of high-value commerce that makes these shipping lanes so strategically vital. The presence of so much merchant traffic highlights why freedom of navigation operations remain essential to global economic stability. If any single nation succeeded in controlling these international waters, the economic consequences would ripple throughout the global economy, affecting everything from consumer electronics to energy supplies. The American naval presence serves as a guarantee that these waters remain open to all nations, regardless of regional territorial disputes. As the situation intensified, the Princeton's cooperative engagement capability automatically shared threat data across every ship in the strike group, demonstrating the networked nature of modern naval warfare. The Nimitz herself, that massive floating platform of American diplomatic and military power, adjusted her flight operations with precision timing that only decades of experience can provide. The destroyers Chung-hoon and Kidd repositioned themselves to create overlapping defensive zones around the carrier, ensuring that any attack would face multiple layers of sophisticated defense systems. The tactical picture became increasingly complex when an E-2D Hawkeye orbiting at 25,000 feet detected multiple aircraft launching from the Chinese carrier Shandong. These radar signatures matched J-15 fighters, climbing aggressively and heading south in what appeared to be an attempt at aerial intimidation. However, the Hawkeye's elevated position provided American controllers with a god's-eye view of everything within 400 miles, giving them unprecedented situational awareness. Observing the Chinese fighters struggle to gain altitude revealed one of the fundamental limitations of ski-jump aircraft launch systems compared to steam catapults. The J-15s were burning fuel at an accelerated rate while climbing hard, likely due to the reduced fuel and weapons loads necessitated by their carriers' launch limitations. This technical constraint would prove significant as the aerial engagement developed, limiting the Chinese aircraft's combat endurance and tactical flexibility. The final piece of China's coordination puzzle emerged when sonar operators detected a submerged contact approximately 80 nautical miles away. The acoustic signature matched that of a Type 039 diesel-electric submarine, but the vessel was generating enough noise to be easily tracked by American sensors. Competent submarine crews would have been mortified by such poor noise discipline, as stealth represents the primary advantage of submarine warfare. This multi-domain approach revealed China's attempt at coordinated intimidation using surface ships from the 1990s, carrier aircraft that couldn't carry full weapons loads, and submarines so loud they might as well have been broadcasting their positions on radio frequencies. The technological gaps weren't measured in years, but in decades, highlighting the challenges facing any navy attempting to project power against America's sophisticated naval forces. The situation represented textbook bullying tactics that only succeed when the target lacks the capability or resolve to respond effectively. Unfortunately for Beijing, they had chosen to challenge the wrong navy in waters where American forces have maintained dominance since World War II. The United States Navy has been perfecting blue water operations since 1914, and these Chinese forces were about to receive a comprehensive demonstration of American naval superiority. As tensions peaked, the USS Nimitz flight deck transformed into a showcase of controlled chaos that only American carriers have truly mastered. FA-18E Super Hornets from the VFA-14 Top Hatters Squadron launched at 45-second intervals, demonstrating the precision timing that steam catapult systems enable. This represents a significant operational advantage over ski jump carriers, which depend on inefficient launch methods that Chinese naval aviation can only dream of matching. Steam billowed from the catapult tracks as American naval aviation executed power projection with the efficiency that has defined carrier operations for generations. Each aircraft launched at full combat weight with complete fuel loads and comprehensive weapons packages, ready to engage any threat that emerged. This capability advantage extends far beyond what Chinese forces could physically observe, as every American fighter connected through Link 16 data networks, sharing sensor information in real time. The technological mismatch became apparent as the first division of Super Hornets climbed through 15,000 feet, their APG-79 AESA radars already tracking the incoming J-15s at maximum range. These advanced radar systems feature 1,100 transmit-receive modules capable of tracking dozens of targets simultaneously. While the Chinese fighters relied on mechanically scanned radars that swept back and forth like lighthouse beams, broadcasting their positions to anyone monitoring electronic emissions. Meanwhile, the struggling J-15s provided a painful reminder of ski jump launch limitations. Without catapults, they launched with reduced fuel and weapons loads, forcing them to climb hard to gain energy advantage while burning fuel at accelerated rates. American fighters, launched at full combat weight, possessed both fuel endurance and weapons capacity that Chinese aircraft simply couldn't match, creating a fundamental imbalance in combat capability. The weapon and fuel loadout advantages represented only the visible aspects of American technological superiority. Every F-18 connected via Link 16 data networks, meaning that when one aircraft detected something, every fighter in the formation immediately gained that information. Chinese pilots, meanwhile, relied on voice communications and individual sensors, essentially fighting a networked team while operating with significant information disadvantages. The E-18G Growlers entered the engagement without firing a single shot, yet their presence fundamentally altered the electromagnetic battlefield. These electronic warfare variants carried ALQ-99 jamming pods capable of disrupting enemy electronics from 100 miles away. As they established jamming orbits, Chinese communications began fragmenting, and their radar screens filled with false contacts that multiplied real threats while hiding actual American positions. On Chinese radar displays, ghost contacts proliferated as American electronic warfare systems created phantom aircraft that appeared and disappeared, multiplied and merged in bewildering patterns. What looked like 4 F-18s suddenly became 12, then 20, as radar locks broke and reformed constantly. J-15 pilots found themselves fighting phantom targets while real threats maneuvered unseen, demonstrating the decisive advantage of advanced electronic warfare capabilities. The Americans executed a defensive formation called the Wall, a tactical arrangement perfected through decades of combat experience. High combat air patrol at 35,000 feet, medium-altitude coverage at 25,000 feet, and low-altitude protection at 15,000 feet created multiple overlapping engagement zones with mutual support capabilities. This formation left nowhere for Chinese aircraft to maneuver without entering someone's weapons envelope. By contrast, the Chinese formation remained tightly bunched, a tactical necessity when data links cannot support distributed operations. They had to maintain visual contact for coordination purposes, making their movements predictable and vulnerable to American tactical planning. Their J-15s might look impressive in propaganda materials, but in actual combat scenarios, they represented flying antiques attempting to engage networked 21st-century warfare systems. Intelligence gathering continued throughout the encounter, as an RC-135V rivet joint provided crucial electronic surveillance. This ungainly Boeing 707 derivative had been monitoring Chinese communications for 6 hours, its electronic intelligence equipment cataloging every emission from Chinese forces. The Mandarin linguists aboard intercepted communications, revealing Chinese pilots requesting permission for aggressive maneuvers, highlighting the centralized command structure that would prove problematic in dynamic combat situations. The intercepts revealed that Chinese forces were asking permission to buzz American ships, a request that American pilots found amusing given their training to seize tactical initiative. By the time Beijing approved any aggressive action, the tactical situation would have changed multiple times, demonstrating the disadvantage of centralized command structures in rapidly evolving combat scenarios. Throughout this aerial drama, the Princeton's defense systems tracked every threat with mechanical precision that only advanced automation can provide. Her SPY radar, capable of tracking baseball-sized objects at over 165 miles, made the Chinese destroyer appear enormous on tactical displays. Fire control solutions updated continuously, and it seemed increasingly likely that these calculations might prove necessary for actual engagement. The situation crossed a critical threshold when the Jun Shan's Type 346A phased array radar stopped searching and locked onto the USS Nimitz with fire control quality tracking. In naval warfare, this action represents one step away from missile launch, the electromagnetic equivalent of pointing a loaded weapon at someone. Such aggressive action would normally trigger immediate retaliation from any competent navy. Inside Princeton's Combat Information Center, the response was immediate but measured, demonstrating the professional discipline that separates real naval forces from amateur operations. American restraint didn't indicate inability, as the Princeton's own fire control radars remained in standby mode while her 122 vertical launch cells contained enough firepower to send the Chinese destroyer to the ocean floor within seconds. SM-6 missiles could reach out 240 kilometers, while SM-2 missiles in surface attack mode stood ready to turn the Chinese ship into an artificial reef. Every firing solution received continuous updates, and the Chinese destroyer faced threats from multiple systems at multiple angles with zero survival probability if the situation escalated to actual combat. The fire control lock persisted for exactly 30 seconds, long enough for Chinese forces to claim they could have attacked, but not long enough to trigger American self-defense measures. This represented choreographed aggression against the wrong opponent, as Princeton's crew documented everything: timestamps, signal characteristics, and bearing data that would prove quite useful in any future shooting engagement. In the air, a J-15 pilot decided to demonstrate individual recklessness by breaking formation and diving toward an F-18 in what fighter pilots call a thump, an aggressive close pass meant to intimidate. The American pilot, trained at the Navy's elite Top Gun school where such maneuvers are routine training exercises, simply rolled inverted and pulled into the Chinese fighter's 6 o'clock position. For 3 seconds, the American pilot maintained a perfect firing solution, his helmet-mounted display showing the Chinese fighter's engines glowing hot in infrared signatures. One trigger squeeze would send an AM-9X Sidewinder missile straight into the J-15's exhaust. Professional discipline held firm. The moment passed, but Chinese forces still had one final escalation planned. The Chinese submarine made its critical error when it raised its snorkel to recharge batteries, immediately alerting American sonar operators to its precise location. The Princeton's SQQ-89 sonar suite had been tracking the submarine for the past hour, cataloging its acoustic signature and fixing its position to within meters of accuracy. If combat commenced, the submarine would have approximately 12 seconds to contemplate its tactical mistakes before an ASROC missile turned it into debris. The tactical picture had evolved into a textbook study of how not to conduct naval operations. Chinese forces had positioned themselves in a tactical box, carrier to the northwest, destroyer to the west, and submarine to the southwest. If shooting started, none would survive the opening 5 minutes of combat, and American forces were prepared to demonstrate exactly how such an engagement would conclude. At 14:30 hours, the USS Nimitz launched everything capable of flight in the largest single-carrier display of air power in years. 48 aircraft roared off her deck. Super Hornets loaded with live ordnance, EA-18G Growlers carrying electronic warfare packages capable of blacking out entire cities, and E-2D Hawkeyes commanding the electromagnetic high ground. The afternoon sky darkened with American aircraft in an awesome display of naval aviation capability. The Growlers commenced electronic warfare operations at full power, their ALQ-99 pods turning Chinese radar screens into abstract art. False contacts appeared by the hundreds, while real aircraft vanished into electronic noise. The Shandong's air defense picture resembled someone throwing paint at radar screens, as Chinese controllers couldn't distinguish genuine threats from electronic ghosts. Then came the submarine demonstration that would define this entire encounter. A Virginia-class attack submarine that had been shadowing the Chinese formation for 8 days surfaced 6 nautical miles from the Shandong, close enough for Chinese lookouts to observe her with unaided vision. The psychological impact proved devastating. 8 days of undetected operations meant their entire anti-submarine screen had failed completely. If this had been actual warfare, the Chinese carrier would already have been destroyed. The submarine's commanding officer ordered an emergency surface purely for dramatic effect, the vessel bursting from the water like a breaching whale with water cascading off her hull in the afternoon sunlight. Photographers on Chinese ships captured perfect images of American undersea dominance before the submarine slid back beneath the waves after 90 seconds. The message was unmistakable. American forces own the undersea domain. Back in the air, American fighters demonstrated air combat maneuvering superiority against increasingly desperate Chinese opponents. The J-15s, already low on fuel from their ski jump launches and hard climb to altitude, found themselves unable to match American fighters turn for turn. Each engagement concluded identically. American fighters in firing positions, Chinese fighters defensive and burning precious fuel. One by one, the Chinese fighters disengaged and returned to the Shandong with near-empty fuel tanks, their combat endurance exhausted in fruitless attempts to match American capabilities. Some probably experienced emergency fuel warnings they had only seen in training simulators. By 1623, the Shandong's carrier strike group began withdrawing. Official Chinese communications spoke of completing scheduled exercises, but everyone understood the reality. They had come to demonstrate Chinese naval power, to intimidate lawful navigation, and to claim waters that didn't belong to them. Instead, they received a comprehensive lesson in why the South China Sea remains, in practical terms, America's 6th Great Lake. This encounter perfectly illustrates why maritime dominance continues to shape global politics, and why certain naval forces maintain their supremacy through decades of technological investment and professional excellence. The South China Sea may be geographically distant from American shores, but it remains strategically vital to global commerce and international stability. When freedom of navigation is challenged, professional navies respond with the kind of measured demonstration that occurred on this remarkable day in June. The implications extend far beyond this single encounter, highlighting the ongoing importance of naval power projection in maintaining international maritime law and protecting the global commerce that depends on free and open sea lanes. As long as these waters carry trillions of dollars in annual trade, professional naval forces will continue, ensuring that international waters remain accessible to all nations, regardless of regional territorial ambitions.